Hey guys, coldbrew here. Welcome to another Racial Legends video. Guys, this one will be going over the clan boss and how to maximize your damage using debuffs and which champions are best for using those debuffs. This might be a long video, but stick through it, guys. If you're still having issues in getting that maximum chest possible for the difficulty that you're trying to take down. So the clan boss has many difficulties, and as you go up, of course, the difficulty is higher. The requirements are higher in terms of gear. Accuracy is needed way more than usual, and that's where debuffs come into play. So in this video, we'll be going over how debuffs affect your damage potential for the clan boss and how you can actually get those maximum rewards, starting from easy to normal. You can actually start getting void shards, which can be, if you get lucky, you can get those void legendary champions, and eventually once you start beating nightmare and ultra nightmare, you get those sacred shards where those legendary champions can be acquired at a 6% chance, which can be huge. Plus all the other gear, the books, the brews, the potions, everything that's associated with the clan boss can be acquired if you have a good synergy. So starting up, which is the strongest debuff that you can actually have when trying to take down the clan boss? The number one debuff that you need to be focusing on at the moment is poisons. Poisons. The reason for poisons being the strongest debuff is because it's so much easier available through your champions, even from rare champion. Starting up with the one and only Kale. It's the one champion that we all get from our selection. If we start out the game and pick Kale, then this is an easy way of you getting some poisons. But which other champions can be used here? Namely rare and epic legendary champions. There's many of them that have poisons, but I would say the most used rare out of all the rares available that does have poisons is, personally, my opinion, Frozen Banshee is number one in terms of poisons. She has this great skill on her A1. When a poison sensitivity debuff is available on the boss, then she'll be applying a poison for every single attack that she's doing, with a chance to get it on both of her hits. When you book her out, that's 100% chance. So 2 poisons per time that she attacks. She has her own poison sensitivity debuff, which also boosts your damage. So why are poisons so good? Because poisons do damage based on the boss's health, and it's capped, but with longer debuffs being on the boss, so a poison having a 2-turn, a 3-turn duration, then the more damage you're getting for every turn the boss is taking. So very crucial to have those poisons in, more crucial than any other debuff in the game. There's of course teams that don't utilize poisons and still do great amount of damage, but that's more for the end game players and not for the starting out players, the mid game players who are still looking for ways to optimize their damage. So Frozen Banshee, I would say, is the best rare that has poisons. Then we'll go to the epics. For epics, there's so many out there strictly for poisons. I would even go with a cold brawler with the Ogren tribes here. Let's go and find a cold brawler. Great poisoner, even has it on his passive with a 4-turn duration for a poison. But if you're looking for the best epic, in my opinion, for a poisoner plus other debuffs that she applies, we're gonna go to the Skinwalkers and with Feign. So she applies both poisons on her A2 plus a decreased attack and decreased defense weaken on her A3. So has many roles to fit into a champion. And then of course for the legendary, for poisons is the one and only Dracomorph. There's no other champion used more often for the clan boss than Dracomorph. He's the number one champion used in the end game teams, and he can be used from the easy clan boss all the way to the ultra nightmare clan boss without a doubt, because of how much damage he can bring into a team with those 4 poisons on his A2 with a guaranteed 100% chance to apply this. So definitely use him if you ever get him. You don't need me to say that for you for sure. So we talked about on how important poisons are for the clan boss, how they give you more damage the more turns the boss takes, and when the boss takes turns with the poison debuffs, then you get more damage going. But you also need this other debuff for your damage to increase, because as the clan boss takes more turns, the boss becomes way stronger. With every 10 turns he takes, he actually damages your team way more than he used to for the turns 1 to 9, for example. So the next biggest debuff is of course decreased attack. A great example of this is Coffin Smasher. He has a great utility with all his other skills, so he's considered one of the best rares available for this job. He has the decreased attack on his A1, his default skill. So take a look at that. 50% decrease to the boss's attack or the enemy's attack. But specifically for the clan boss, the best champions that have a decreased attack have it on their default skill. The reason is that they can spam it regardless of cooldown. So if a different champion had a decreased attack on their other skill, their A2 or A3, then that will have a cooldown, and possibly there will be gaps in when you have the decreased attack on the boss. Ideally, you want to have the decreased attack at all times so you maximize the potential of your team surviving. So the longer your team survives by having the decreased attack on the boss, the better it is for you, because the more turns, the more chances you have to do damage on the boss, of course. That's where Coffin Smasher comes into play. He has a great A1 with having a decreased attack chance, and it goes up with more books that you put into him. And he also does it on a triple hitting A1 attack, which means you have more chances to actually apply it from his attacks. Then we go to epic champions that have this. There's many epic champions that have a decreased attack. There's Jarek, there's Tyrell, there's Sepulchre Sentinel. Personally, I think Sepulchre Sentinel is one of the best ones because she provides other stuff. Through her kit, she provides an increased defense and a block debuffs buff. But this video is all about debuffs. So her A1 has that 60% chance to apply the decreased attack. And because of her other utility, she is considered one of the best decreased attack champions from the epic champion category. And then we go, of course, to the legendary champions. And I would say from the barbarians, we've got Alten for that role. So Alten has a great decreased attack on his A1 plus increased defense on his A2. He has a great aura for increased ally defense. So overall, fantastic champion, plus the potential of him doing a lot of damage onto the boss. So definitely one of the best legendary champions for a decreased attack debuff. Next up, of course, we've got decreased defense and weaken in terms of debuffs that you need to be applying on the clan boss. Those two debuffs give you the opportunity to do more damage on the boss, both with your normal skills, your critical rate and critical damage, but also through the tier 6 masteries War Master and Giant Slayer that you get from the offense tree. Those are very much required for your damage to be boosted way more on the clan boss, because you do percentage health damage on all your skills. There's a chance for War Master and Giant Slayer to proc. That being said, there's not any champion from the rare category that can apply both at the same time. An easy to access, very beginner friendly champion that has a decreased defense is War Maiden. She has it on her A3 with a 100% chance to apply at a 3-turn cooldown, which is not that bad. She also has poisons on her A1 on the weaker side, the 2.5% poison, but it's a great beginner champion to use in the easy and normal clan boss. But as you go higher, she drops off in terms of utility, and other champions can actually overpower her in terms of how much they're used. In terms of epics that apply both a decreased defense and a weaken, I would say that we are going for Fane again. Fane has that big kit. She's one of the best champions used for the clan boss for unkillable teams, because her base stats are quite low in terms of defense. But decreased defense, weaken on the A3 plus the poisons that we discussed earlier make her the best epic, in my opinion, in terms of decreased defense and weaken. Of course, you can either apply decreased defense with one champion and weaken with another champion and have that in terms of a team. But the more champions you have in which have multiple debuff skill sets available, gives you the opportunity to mix in other champions as well, which might not have a debuff, but instead have buffs to your own team, which gives you way more damage potential as well. And then the legendaries, of course, we've got again Dracomor with that decreased defense and weaken on his A3, but there's other champions as well, such as Razin, which is a fusion champion, and he has it on his A2 with a 3 turns cooldown when you book it out, which is very important to book it out for that 100% chance to apply both the decreased defense and the weaken debuff on the boss. Next up, in terms of debuffs, if you can apply this specific debuff, then your damage potential goes way higher. We covered this champion before that does have it, and it is Frozen Banshee. She has that poison sensitivity. What this does is gives you way more damage with your poisons only. So if you have a poison on the boss plus poison sensitivity, then those poisons do more damage for all poisons, not just the ones that Frozen Banshee applies. So there's not many champions at the moment that do apply this specific debuff. The best one, most available one, is Frozen Banshee from the rare category. From the epics, if I'm not mistaken, there's only one champion that does it, and I think it's Kani right here. She has it on her A1. That's it. She has it on her A1, but she's not really used for the clan boss at the moment. It's much better to go for Frozen Banshee compared to Canny, just to get that poison sensitivity. And then for legendaries, the best one, the most easily available, but it takes a lot of hard work, is Lydia. She does have that poison sensitivity, boosts your damage way more, plus everything else that Lydia has. She is used in some clan boss teams, but not that often, because there's a speed tuning aspect to using Lydia for the clan boss. Next up is another debuff that I would say is closely related to poison sensitivity and poisons, but this debuff varies depending on the champion that applies it. What I'm saying is, because your champions can be rare, epic, legendary champion, your damage can actually vary. So let's go to the first example here with Bulwark. Bulwark can apply an HP burn debuff on the clan boss. This HP burn debuff, because it's applied by a rare champion, the damage will be lower at 50,000 per turn that the boss takes. You can only apply one HP burn debuff on the clan boss at any time, so you cannot have multiple HP burn debuffs. At the moment, there's no champions that can apply multiple HP burn debuffs, and the HP burn debuffs do more damage than poisons. The limitation is that you can only have one on the boss. So ideally, you'll have an epic or a legendary champion applying it, because that's when more damage will be dealt with each turn the boss takes, and the HP burn debuff starts doing its damage. That's when you need those epic or legendary champions. Bulwark is a great example of an HP burn champion. We also covered Coffin Smasher. He also has that as well in his kit. But for epic champions, the epic champion that I have noted here is, of course, Geomancer, again in the dwarves. We'll go and check him out. Look at this. Geomancer has a great kit because of damage reduction from having an HP burn that he applies on the boss, and he also provides big utility through that with his great deflect ability with Giant Slayer. So Geomancer definitely the best epic overall that also applies an HP burn. You definitely want to use him for the clan boss if you do have him. And then finally, for a legendary that applies an HP burn debuff, I would say, I personally think Venus is the best one, because she has the multiple kit available for her. She not only has the HP burn, she has a decreased defense and weaken in one skill, 3-turn cooldown, and she's also got poisons on her A1. She has a lead aura for all allies, boosting their HP by 33%. So multiple benefits for using Venus as a legendary. Then going on to the not so oftenly used debuffs, but there's still some use from using those debuffs. It's Leech debuff. What this does is it gives the opportunity for your own team to get some healing back from the damage that they do on the clan boss. So we've got the lifesteal set that heals you by 30% of the damage that they deal, but the Leech debuff does a healing of 18%. It was boosted in a recent patch a couple of months ago. I want to say at least 6 months ago, where the Leech debuff now does 18% healing when you do damage on the clan boss. But the Leech debuff needs to be on the boss at all times if you're looking for a team that uses the Leech debuff. There's a rare that does this, Ghoulish Ranger. I found him. I don't recommend using him instead of lifesteal sets, because there's other better ways for you to get damage using a lifesteal set, especially if you're looking to get a rare to do the job. I would say go for lifesteal sets instead and focus on getting more poisoners in. But then we go into the epic and legendary champion category when things go a bit better with let's say, for example, the Sacred Order. We have where it is, Deacon Armstrong right here has a Leech debuff not only on his A1, but he also provides decreased defense on his A2, a boost of turn meter to your team, a speed aura. So multiple skills available for your own team, and then the Leech comes into play and helps you survive a bit longer on the clan boss with Leech. Then we have a legendary Mashalt, of course, namely one of the best ones that you could use that also applies Leech plus other buffs. Amazing champion in many areas of the game. I wish I had him just to boost my my stats a little bit, and it's a champion I've been looking for since I've been opening shards. Really, definitely a great champion to have with a Leech debuff application through his skills. Then finally, we'll go over one of the least used debuffs. It's namely bomb debuffs, decreased critical rate and decreased critical damage. There's not much use of bombs in general for the clan boss. There's many champions that have this skill. Not so much for bombs. Bombs can be used on the clan boss. We have Warmother here who does bomb damage by 100% boost on the bosses, but nobody really uses bombs instead of poisons. The reason for this is the bombs take some turns to actually detonate. They don't do so much damage compared to poisons, plus a poison sensitivity. If you have a champion that extends the duration of debuffs, then it causes an issue with bombs, because bombs need to detonate. They need to go from the countdown of 3 turns, 2, 1, and then they'll explode. Those 3 turns that the boss will take, you would have a poison debuff, and it would take 3 times and do triple the damage of the bombs. Bombs depend on your own gear, not on the enemy boss's health. You need to really be going in with an unkillable setup for the bombs to really work. Again, I wouldn't go for a bomb setup. I would try and focus on finding a poison champion instead of bombs. That's why they're not so much used for clan boss and getting more clan boss damage. And then the next debuffs, of course, are decrease the critical rate and decrease critical damage. I'm not saying that they're not used as often as the others, but I would say they're not as required as the others to be boosting your damage. These are more for end game setups. So decrease critical rate, let's see Ursign right here who has it on his A2. Decrease critical rate reduces it by 30%. You only need 15% because the boss has that base of 50% chance to crit you. So if you reduce it to 0, then you'll never have to worry about the boss critting you. Decrease critical damage can also help, but they take up those much needed slots of having poisons or HP burn or decreased attack. Those are very, very essential to have instead of a decreased critical rate or decreased critical damage if you're just starting out the game. Even on end game setups, we would be going for poisons instead of decreased critical rate, because the chance is so low that the damage potential that you will be getting for that one poison for the potential of, let's say, unlimited turns for some setups or 50 turns for unkillable setups is much better than that decreased critical rate. Decreased critical damage is also in the same side because it just reduces the critical damage by a little bit. Does not really affect your team's potential to do damage, because the damage that the bosses does is much more decreased by a decreased attack rather than a decreased critical damage. Now finally, for some debuffs that you can apply on the boss, but those are really useless depending on the setup, and most oftenly you should not be trying to apply those debuffs on the clan boss. So if you go over and click on the clan boss, you'll notice that the boss is immune to stun, freeze, sleep, decrease speed. Those cannot be applied on the boss. The same thing with fear, true fear, they just did not include it right here. You cannot do these things on the clan boss, so don't go in there with the champion that applies this, and that's why they're on the bottom of the list. But there's some other debuffs there that can also be annoying to have on the boss. So a block heal debuff is useless and can actually be applied on the boss. You can also have a block buffs debuff on the boss, which can be useful when the boss is on affinity. So right now the boss is under 50%, so he's on affinity. He can get an increased attack buff on himself. You can go with that block buffs debuff, but again, it would be better to go in with a champion that removes buffs instead, such as Razin, who also has the kit of decreased defense and weaken, and his big potential of getting a lot of damage done. So there's some debuffs out there that can be applied on the boss, but you should not be trying to apply them because they take up those very much needed debuff slots on the clan boss. You cannot have a limited amount of debuffs on the boss. You can only have 10 debuffs, and that's where the poisons come into play, the decreased defense, the weaken. And in my specific team that you're looking on right now, this is called the Bat Eater team. You don't even need the decreased attack, but because I have Feign, I don't have a better champion. I don't have Dracomorph on my account yet. I do need Feign to do the damage, so she applies it as a byproduct of her skills. So I do what I can, and this team works great for all difficulties of the clan boss. I hope this video helped you guys. I hope it gave you a much better understanding on how to do more damage to the clan boss and how to get those much better chests. If you did like this video, please consider subscribing. Always like the videos, guys. It helps with the YouTube interaction. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, as I said, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya.